Here's the thing: we're not gonna know what freedom was. Is the shitty part. We're gonna wake up. We already are losing the idea, like what real idea of freedom is. And I know because I grew up in the '70s. I was free as fuck. Let me tell you.
There's some very good marketers who are making you feel that way.
Yeah. No, there were girls that were making me feel that way. Actually.
Like whenever anyone was 16, they were like, "Man, humanity was so free then, you know. Like we used to sneak behind the Ministry of Thought Crimes.
Hey, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore.
I used to sneak behind.
You can't do that
the
anymore.
Thought Police's headquarters and get the best BJs and smoke the best weed. We were so free.
We used to sneak into the pool. Welcome to Le Grande Bouffe,
the big feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer.
What's going on, Cole?
Well, you kind of fried my brain with the Century of the Self. We're going to have some serious unpacking to do here.
Not enough fake news for you.
We got our. Oh yeah, and I love how all this shit is about fake news. There's so much great. Did you know, listeners, that the 1936 World Fair was all fake?
A bunch of bullshit propaganda. I mean, like I could have guessed that, but
I never knew that. That was like, you know, that was the equivalent of Hitler with the however many 4 million people that he had at that one rally or whatever, you know.
That's true. That's a very like kind of not just creepy but sad like comparison.
Oh, yeah.
That, like he's got all these people marching in swastikas and we're like this car drives you.
All right, so Mike, you have chosen the beer to go with our Adam Curtis documentary. It's really a mini series, so it's 4 hours long. There's a little repetition in it, but it will blow your mind.
It teaches you what you need to know. So Adam Curtis a little while back had a show. Basically, he put together a giant clip show because he has a very specific aesthetic and use of archive footage, and he did a big show with Massive Attack. So we're drinking massive beer from Gigantic Brewing Company.
I love it, massive with an exclamation point, and then it's got some crazy ram goat thing.
It's kind of satanic. It's
very
satanic. Heavy metal.
Oh yeah, and it says massive beer, Gigantic, and I can only imagine. Oh lordy, it's a 12%er.
This is one of the highest.
Ladies and gentlemen, if
I think this is technically wine, right?
Yeah, certainly if we have to stop the podcast early because Mike is on the floor, I'm just warning you that could happen, listeners.
There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius on the bottom.
Nice.
So you know I like it. So it says, "Know this: human lives are brief and trivial, like an olive that ripens and falls, passing its mother, thanking the tree it grew on." Massive beer. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love poetry, and the fact that they stuck that really cool poem on there from Marcus Aurelius, that is
technically, that I'm looking
that's
at, 12%
respectable.
of saying is this wine. This is actually barley wine.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know that much about what that would mean, but barley being a key ingredient of beer, but this is like fermented to the point that this is wine, and it's almost got like a sake kind of thing to it.
Yeah, it's really chewy and yummy. It's definitely, it would go great with a big piece of steak.
It's from the Midlands of England, so
you kind of want to pour it on your steak, really.
I would absolutely consider that. I would
soak your steak in it.
I would
cook your steak in this beer.
That's not a bad idea.
Right?
Marinate a steak in this, that'd be amazing.
I know. It's yummy.
All
right, so we're drinking the Gigantic beer, but we're gonna have to bust out on you with some serious Adam Curtis stuff. And so before we get into it too hot and heavy, I do want to say, you know how NPR, everybody on the show always says sort of? Every single person on NPR, even the hosts, they always say sort of. They're always mitigating everything. We don't do that baloney.
Is Donald Trump's White House completely fabricating this information? Well, sort of, Joan.
Yeah. No, we don't do that on Le Grande Bouffe.
You telling me that?
Sure. Once in a while, a little sort of will slip out. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's nothing like NPR. And yet people give money to NPR hand over fist.
I
So
see where this is going.
and so
I thought this was just a rant against NPR.
no. So this is my plea to our listeners is that you help us reach our goal of having 1,000 followers
Mhm.
on SoundCloud. Right now we've got about 40, and I think that if you just tell 2 friends, if you do it yourself, and then you get 2 of your pals to also follow us on SoundCloud, I bet that we could get 1,000 followers, I don't know, in a month, I would think.
SoundCloud is a great platform. I know a lot of people listen to us on
I
iTunes
love it. I
and
personally
other
love
ones,
it.
but SoundCloud is really cool, and you can easily pull it up on your computer. You can be sitting at work, listen to us. You can't really do that as
And you can al-
easily on iTunes.
And I don't put a fine point on this, but you can always listen to all of our podcasts collected on my website, colesmithy.com, COLESMITHEY.com. And they're all there. You'll see the podcast section. Just click on that. And you'll even get to see some funny photos whenever we have a guest. We usually take a photo. And so there's some crazy photos of us with Matt Blankman and Thelma Adams and Phil Hall and a few other people.
I like the photo from our Dahmer episode the most. We just had a severed head. We should have dug up. You don't have a drill. We should have gotten a drill.
I do have a drill.
Oh, what do we? All right.
We're
We'll have
amateurs.
to watch another Dahmer movie.
Right,
pull that
and
out.
and that's a good segue because this is our second Adam Curtis film, and the first one, Hypernormalization, which had come out recently when we had it talked about it on the podcast. Now we're going back because we've had such great traffic with the Adam Curtis when everybody's been listening to our Hypernormalization, and we love Adam Curtis. In fact, when Mike and I first came up with the idea to do a podcast, we were drinking some beer, and somehow Adam Curtis came up.
Because I talk about him all the
Yeah,
fucking
and
time.
right, and so we were talking about The Power of Nightmares, and which I had seen in Cannes, I don't know, a decade ago or so, and so we kind of bonded over the fact that we both had seen that movie and could talk about things from that movie, and I think we could probably do a review of Power of Nightmares.
Absolutely. I've got some firsthand accounts of people who are in that particular world that he's describing. Yeah, I mean, should we jump in now? Has our corporate corner concluded our moments of PR and shilling? Yeah, so do you want to give a summary of like what this movie is? I feel like it should be fairly easy because he uniquely for a documentarian is always like stating his thesis. It's like kind of refreshing that someone just keeps telling you what his movie is about, and then he just sort of executes on that argument. And I would say to pretty good effect. Like I have like on my second time watching through this whole 4 hours, I have a couple questions now, things that I think are a bit glossed over. But
Right.
do you want to give a hack at what the synopsis for this whole thing is?
Yeah, I'm going to give it straight to you from Wikipedia, even though I despise Wikipedia. The Century of the Self is a 2002 British television documentary series by filmmaker Adam Curtis. It focuses on the work of psychoanalysis Sigmund Freud and his daughter Anna Freud and his nephew, PR consultant Edward Bernays. In one episode, Curtis says, the series is about how those in power have used Freud's theories to try and control the dangerous crowd in an age of mass democracy.
It's programmed to 4 episodes, and each one are a bit distinct in its focus. The first one, unless I'm mistaken, is about the invent of the invention or the advent of public relations, which is basically a PR spin on the concept of propaganda, but then taken to another more refined level.
Right. Well, the title is Happiness Machines, and it really just kicks right in about Freud and really about how Freud came to notoriety and how his nephew Edward Bernays was the father of public relations.
He literally coined the term. You had people who were trying to trick people beforehand, but he flipped it into this thing called public relations, and it made it about communicating with the masses and trying to herd them in the right directions.
Right. There's a lot of condescension on the masses. Everybody thinks that they are irrational, and this is Freud's point: is that man is really too dangerous to be left to his own devices. That he'll always revert to his base animal instincts, especially in crowds, and so and this sets off an explosion of psychoanalysts.
Hmm.
All these guys who get to walk around like, just, gloating over the smell of their own farts and making tons of money hand over fist, because all of a sudden you've got all of the corporations are looking to them for guidance. You've got politicians looking to them for guidance. And so they made a huge cultural push. It's almost a coup, and it's very cultish too. It's very culty.
It's a priesthood of sorts, and that's what this movie does really well at laying out. There is that there is a concerted effort to make this secular but very normative
Mhm.
priesthood of
Elite.
who understood what made people healthy
Yeah.
and what made them normal and fit in. And there's hardly a corporation in America where that's not useful information.
Right. And so what they were trying to do, eh, I want to give an example, the Betty Crocker example. I love that.
That's a perfect example. Yeah, it's amazing.
Is the Betty Crocker was trying to sell their cake mix, and for some reason housewives were not digging it. And
It was just like add water, make a cake, boom, you're done.
Yeah, yeah, and this is in the 50s when everything was about ease and whatever.
But it's a transition period too between a woman's role is to just provide for her husband and to like slave,
Right.
to slave over the stove and to just her coming out of the barn basically.
So I believe it was Bernays who had the idea. And let me just give you I wish I could give you the spelling on his name, because it's not like the hollandaise. It's not like Bernays the sauce.
I think it's Bernays.
Bernays.
Yeah.
He had the idea to on the instructions, have the woman add an egg.
So it's
And boom, the product took off.
right
Because now women felt that they were doing something. They were putting something of nature into the product. They were creating it. They were cooking. They were creating.
So let's spell out why like psychoanalysis is different than like what existed before. Is you're not just going around asking people like what would make this better, and then you heard a lot of people saying like, oh, we'd want an egg. I think he does a good job kind of later in the series of comparing it to what was happening in England, where there's more traditional investigation to why people like products or politicians.
Right, and Freud was so keen on sexualizing everything. And I also love the scene when the woman, and they show it a few times, where the woman gets in the new car, and before she gets in, she says, "Oh, this looks bigger than the last one." And the guy says, "Yes, by as much as 4 inches in some models." And then she gets in, and she's moaning. She's she's clearly getting off on being in the car. And this is the 50s; it's black and white, and so you can see all how Freud was able to, the way that, because of his philosophies about penis envy and all these things, and that plays into how they got women to smoke.
Yeah,
because they looked at the.
It's hard not to take this for granted because
Yeah.
it's the way that we look at everything, which is like, how do you make something buy something?
Yeah.
Someone buy something,
Right.
And if as soon as you do something entrepreneurial, you're in that problem, and you're like, okay, I'm making a thing. How do I get people to want
Right,
it?
and this is what the movie does: is it shows that unification of politics and capitalism. Because if you can get people to act a certain way based on their desires, then why wouldn't you use that? Why wouldn't everybody in power use that to contain the masses and keep themselves in power?
So I'll do the devil's advocate because I feel like it's so just the world we live in and like the water that we swim in.
It's gotten
that
the water's gotten a lot
It's
hotter.
almost impossible to see what the alternative is.
Uh-huh.
But the alternative is saying like, no, like men, women, some of them at least are made with an endowment of reason in them. And that if you appeal to the angels of their higher nature and for them to truly see why your product or candidate is of greater merit, they will choose by the grace of God the right thing. And this is like, no, fuck that. Like, hide some titties in the ice cube, you know, and
Mhm.
like, and they'll get it. You know, tell them why they're. And like, it's interesting because one way that we often will talk about capitalism that's not exactly how they put it here, but is here's why you suck and why you need this to be better. And the spin on it that you see from inside the industry and from the psychoanalysts that have developed this is more like we are just tapping into people's inner desires that they haven't spoken and helping them fulfill those gaps, those
I
needs.
think it's interesting how psychoanalysis is actually a complete and utter abject failure. But what so all so
It
so
yeah, yeah, let's go on that. It makes this argument that like the
So,
underpinning of this.
so all psychoanalysis did really was put a bunch of shit, holier than thou shit heels in power in the guise of these celebrated psychoanalysis, who then went on to instill themselves in political parties and corporations, to control the masses. And one thing that I don't want to forget to say is how I finally saw myself. You get to that point where you say, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's where I came from,"
Mm.
And I saw that in the '60s when they were talking about the '60s stuff, and this whole autonomy, and I was like, "Yep, there's me," So it's funny how the generational things really do connect, and you will have a moment of recognition, whether you're millennial or Gen X or whatever, or old person.
Right, so this gets into a thing that's like I'm really fascinated in and have been reading about for years, which is psychographics, which is where this sort of came from. This there is a way that marketers break down society that's not how people typically think of it, where you think of breaking down to age
Right.
demographics
Well,
or
you got to talk about
races or
got to talk about focus groups, because that is the key. That's what
right.
Bernays discovered, was that he could focus group the shit out of anything and get this treasure trove of information about people. Which now, and I hope that Curtis does an update on this on the Century of the Self, because now it's transmogrified so far with the help of Facebook and Twitter and the NSA.
Right.
And you had that your point about the fake news earlier, and Bernays, it was in the '40s or something, he created this this fake news agency called the Independent. What is it? Fake news. The Middle
Middle
American
America,
Information
yeah. Yeah.
Bureau. I
Yeah.
mean, ridiculous. So all this
So
stuff,
wait, what do
it's
you
been
do?
going
So
on for a long
then
time.
to like let's take that example for what it is. It was one of these banana republics. Was it Guatemala? I
Yeah,
believe it was
Guatemala.
in Guatemala. He staged a coup because one of his clients was the
United Fruit Company.
United Fruit Company. They were going to be kicked out if the wrong person was elected. So he just spread lies about them being the next
Connected with Moscow.
connected with Moscow, and
It created this whole
he
this
created a
whole
coup.
fantasy
People
of
died. People went to
that
jail.
that communists had infiltrated Guatemala. So Guatemala's in our backyard, the Red Scare,
Now,
and everybody thinks
the
that
movie, I think,
there's Reds in their
the
backyard.
movie, I think, a bit over exaggerates the novelness of just spreading lies about people you don't like. Because I mean, we
Uh-huh.
had the Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
Before that, like we've invaded other
Oh
countries for
yeah.
just abject lies.
Oh yeah. That's all we
What
do.
what was really different about Bernays, right, is that he helped usher in a different concept of what it meant to control people. And someone so this time, my second time going through this, and I've heard of this guy. He's just barely mentioned this. He's called Walter Lippmann.
Uh-huh.
He was a like dean of journalism at a prestigious school, and he had these writings about how the population was I believe like a disordered herd is how he described it, and
Mm-hmm.
that in a properly functioning democracy, like as intended by our founding fathers, you have elites who own society, politicians who work for them that control the people, and then the people who are like the motor for that society. And that is how society works.
Yeah, the only thing you left out were the police and the military.
Well, I think they would like be seen as the tools of the politicians
Yeah,
who are
but you have to include them, and that's that's the name of one of the episodes. Is there is a policeman inside all our heads, and he must be destroyed.
hmm So
But I did
think we
I did
yeah.
want to mention about the Bernays thing because he also invented planned obsolescence,
Mhm.
which is crucial in this cycle that capitalism and politics. I don't even know what we call our system anymore. It's not a democracy. It never was a democracy. But whatever you
Well,
call
as like
our
what I
system.
was just describing as democracy sounds a lot like an oligarchy, right? There are people who own society
Yeah.
and they have employees
Yeah,
called
we
politicians.
yeah, no, it's clear that America is and has been an oligarchy for a long time.
So, what is the like purpose of voting, and what are the people's involvement in politics? And
I love that question because it's an impossible question to answer because I think that I love all the stuff in the movie about how they got to the swing voters, and that's clearly what happened with Trump. Trump was the one who got all those Bernie supporters, not Hillary.
Mhm.
Those were the people who swung, and that just goes to show when you get to the opposite ends, it comes back around and meets pretty closely. And I think so. There's so much stuff. I have to watch this again. I don't think it's an investment to watch this thing. It's 4 hours long, but it's in hour-long increments. So it's a mini series. It was intended, I guess, to watch one every week.
I'm a freak, but I can't stop watching these. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
we record these episodes like 2 at a time now, so I got usually 4-hour movies to watch. But this time I had 6 hours, and it was the easiest one yet because and I've seen this before, and I just slurped down Adam Curtis because he, in a way that I think people can relate to, whatever it is that helps you look to the world in a way that makes it make more sense. He just is like a dose of the world making a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, and I think he's
And I don't think he's always right.
no,
but
and he's
he's got a lens I
he's
appreciate.
certainly authorial. I love his voice. He's a lot easier to take than Noam Chomsky. Nothing against Noam. I love Noam too, but he's got the BBC cred, which is no small matter. So when you're watching this stuff, there's a lot of very
Did
controversial
I tell you Noam
things.
Chomsky respond to an email I sent him this last week?
Yeah, but you can. Oh, this last week?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, I'll tell you because it's on topic. So, there's been a bunch of articles out. One, most especially of Import in Das Magazine, this like Austrian paper that Vice republished. So I don't read Austrian papers regularly, but it's about Donald Trump's social media analyst company who uses big data to analyze people into different psychographic groups.
Well, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is
Yes.
exactly it. This is where
Yes.
this movie leads to, and this is where we are now.
So psychographics are talked about in here where you go beyond just doing focus groups and now you're delivering people, and this started in the 70s, you deliver people very long surveys to ask them about what their values are. And then if you have something you want them to do, you can break them down into different categories. Because everybody, and especially at a certain point, people start saying this more and more, I'm individual, I'm unique, like no one's like me. Well, you know what? There's actually a certain kind of person who says things like that, and there's a way to market towards a person who believes that they're unique and different than everyone else. So, as unique and different as people may be, there are underlying traits that they have, and then you can pitch them a product or a politician or a policy that appeals to those values. And
Well, yeah. And here's the thing: is you're playing on their desires. That's what they want. That's the code. That's the little sweet spot that they're trying to crack. Is what are these people's hopes and dreams and desires, and that's what they exploit. They exploit you at your most intimate level. They get that information and they've got you. And here's the scary part: is that now with the NSA and Facebook, they can recreate you. And so,
Well,
you could die, you or I could
right.
die, and they could keep us, they could even, they could probably keep having us do new podcasts, just based on everything that we've already done.
So, what they used to have to do is they used to have like
But this is Mike and I are alive. This is not the
Oh,
this is not the artificial intelligence version of us. Okay, just to be clear.
oh no, I'm a replicant, Cole. I've been meaning to tell you
Fucker.
this. Yeah.
No.
And this past week, I got an email from Noam Chomsky, and I became a replicant. But yes,
Man,
well, to
and what
answer
was it? Schwarzenegger just said that everyone's gonna become a humanoid or whatever it's called, or cyborg.
Arnold Schwarzenegger said that.
Yes, he
Well, I
says
think he's
anything.
just selling a movie.
No, sorry, it was Elon Musk that said that.
Oh, I believe anything
I
he
can,
said.
yeah.
You confuse Elon Musk and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, that's what drinking a gigantic will do to you.
It will do that. Well, to just like real quick, not leave you hanging. So anyway, I emailed Noam Chomsky because I hear he will respond to as many emails as he can,
That's
and
beautiful.
he does.
Beautiful.
So
I love it.
I sent him a long email, like breaking
Oh
down
my
what this
God.
article had talked
He
about.
loved it. He loved it.
And I asked him, do you think propaganda has categorically changed given big data and social media targeting?
I can't believe it, listeners. This is an exclusive.
This is exclusive.
This is
Unless you're on my Instagram, you don't know this.
Yeah, hit it, Mike.
I asked him if propaganda had categorically changed given big data and social media targeting, and he said, I want to get it exactly, but it'll take a second to pull up. He said, no. He thinks it's just more of it. So I don't necessarily know if I fully believe him. I think there is something different. I think it's kind of categorically different because what had happened with targeting people is you're like, okay, so we're going after the new achievers, okay, and that means we're going to market our product
because that's when they found out that
ways.
everybody wanted to be different. I'm different,
and then people want to be different
I'm
in
kind
very
of different.
particular ways.
I have an earring on my well, there's one over my eyebrow, and then I've got one. Well, it's sort of behind my.
Oh, so you're a piercer. Okay, so we have these sorts of products that we aim towards. Right. Yeah. So
I just want to
Well, let me just finish this.
Okay. Yeah.
Is so like one thing that's different is you would have a product, and so you would create an ad, and you would put it in certain magazines, or you put billboards in certain places. You would target people in these ways. Well, what if you could not just put one kind of ad? What if you could make the ad specific to every single person who they see it? And you know these things about them because their big data has been collected and it's run through an algorithm.
It happens all the time on
your
Facebook.
And so it's not just a product, but it's like two people see the same ad for Donald Trump or against Hillary Clinton, or it doesn't look like an ad, it's just like a social media post.
Oh yeah.
And it's specially designed so that even down to the graphic design has been altered.
Oh yeah.
To be maximally change it, like
the
to
color.
Be overwhelming too. And what is it doing? It's overwhelming your critical thinking.
Oh yeah.
It's appealing to your primal nature so that it is a biological imperative for you to vote for him. And this is, I think, this is the natural progression. We live in these like sci-fi dystopia of what Edward Bernays started. Like step for step for step.
That's right. That's right.
This is
That's
the
right.
dark end of what.
And listeners, if you're on Facebook, FYI, you're working for Facebook.
Yep.
You're helping them gather and retrieve data, and you're exposing your own self, and they're in your subconscious mind because the thing that social media relies on is all of us expressing, those thoughts that otherwise we would edit out. When you think, oh, la-di-da-di-da, and then I just posted that on Facebook or Twitter, and then you look at it the next day and you go, well, yeah, but that's not really there's no context. There's no context for anything. Everything becomes raw data. So what they're stealing is your soul because they're taking all emotionality, all context, all human context out of it and reducing it to ones and zeros.
You know what I suggest for anybody is if you have a Facebook page, like not like your own account, but it's like you manage a page where you post about your Girl Scout troop or like your a fan page for your cats. You have the ability to make Facebook ads. Go and try to make a Facebook ad, and you have the same abilities, the same interface that Nike and Coca-Cola does. And it will tell you how many people of X, Y, and Z demographic and psychographic you can have, and it's bone chilling because you can say, I want women aged 43 to 57 who watch The Real Housewives of Miami that have an interest in social justice and have a degree in nuclear medical engineering. And then on their Facebook pages, they will see what you want them to see. You won't know their name necessarily, but you'll see what they want you to see. And it's something I think people say, well, that's very democratic. Anyone can do it. This is free speech. Anyone can do it. But you know who's doing it the most and will always do it the most and will always do it better is enormous corporations who do not have your best interests at
They're
heart.
making money off of you, and because they discovered through all this Freudian baloney that consumerism gives people the illusion of control.
Yes.
That's the thing. And I'm going to try and read my pathetic handwriting, because I did write this quote directly relates to what Mike just said, because I don't know who says it, but if you watch the movie, you'll tell me. Democracy is reduced from something which assumes an act of citizenry to something which now increasingly is predicated on the public as passive consumers. And that's the punchline for the movie, because all of the data that the NSA is collecting through Facebook and Twitter and who knows what, your phone calls and your messages and your photos and the purpose of that is to exploit you as a passive consumer. And because we now have Google and Amazon running the show, it really is it's a giant circus distraction to keep the masses at bay while the elite exploit you 24/7. All here's the thing, we're not going to know what freedom is the shitty part. We're going to wake up. We already are losing the idea, like what a real idea of freedom is. And I know, because I grew up in the 70s, I was free as fuck, let me tell you.
There's some very good marketers who are making you feel that way.
Yeah. No, there were girls that were making me feel that way, actually.
Like whenever anyone was 16, they were like, man, humanity was so free then, Like we used to sneak behind the Ministry of Thought Crimes.
Hey, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore.
I used to sneak behind
you can't do that anymore.
Thought Police's headquarters and get the best BJs and smoke the best weed. We were so free.
We used to sneak into the pool. We get drunk and sneak into the
we used to sleep into that places where the precogs are like doing their thing, and we just do lines of Soylent.
So what's
powder?
That's the next. See, this is your next generation. That's the next generation. What comes after you, Mike? Because you're a millennial. What are the next ones going to be called? What's the next generation?
Well, I think it's very apocalyptic because the people younger than me, I'm a generation.
We're going to call them the desktops.
Well, no, there's a Generation Z, so it's like we're done, right? Like,
oh yeah, okay, I like it.
Like,
no, that's right.
I mean, are they going to be the double A's? Like, is this like an Excel sheet? And like, I don't know, man. Like,
no, you're right. I like it. Gen Z. You heard it here first. No, I don't know if it's
my job, I watch a lot of marketing videos,
and that's where we're at.
Like this, and they're talking. The people
See, what you don't know is that Mike is actually working. He's under deep cloak, and he's working inside the system.
We're all inside the system.
No, but you're especially.
I do.
You're especially close to the nerve center.
I get to see a lot of videos from financial institutions to their investors and marketers. And like as freaked out as everyone is as a person, as a financial institution, people are like, yeah, I mean, like things are going pretty. There's a lot of like chaos, but in terms of the market, big thumbs up, everybody. Like people like. The people in power are like loving this situation. But I was gonna say one thing is like in terms of like the people as passive consumer, I'm maybe I'm as pessimistic, maybe I'm more optimistic than you. But one thing I'm seeing is like right now is this experiment where people are waking up and people are like they're being like, all right, where's my lever of power? Okay, this is fucked up. And they're all pulling it really hard, and everyone's looking around, and you see people talking to this, you see posts like this like, wait, so how do I do this? Like, what is it? What's the thing that I do to get what I want again? Like, what? And people are kind of realizing, like, well, you call, you show up, and you yell at town halls and stuff like that. But this is an interesting thing because, like, it works for the Tea Party. It's just with the Tea Party, I don't think really realizes like their desires correlated very well with corporate Americas.
Yeah, but they don't correlate with the sea change of humanity that is just going to wipe those fuckers out. I love Arthur Miller, who was married for a small time, if you don't know, to Marilyn Monroe, and they interview him. I guess it's probably a year and a half, 2 years after she died, and
It's like 65, maybe.
yeah, 64 or something. I don't know. Anyway, and he says, and he talks about suffering. How
And can we talk about why she's in this? Is because she is a very notable patient of psychoanalysis and
Right.
was being held up as sort of like a
yeah,
symbol
well,
for its
and also
success.
kind of like when we didn't know that poor Marilyn had been indoctrinated into a little culty family.
Yeah, they were just like, we're gonna normalize it. Like you never had.
We all love
is
you. We
true.
love you. We love you. We love you.
Marilyn Monroe had a very tragic.
Oh my goodness,
like unformed,
unbelievable!
like
But let me
poor
just,
family life,
but
yeah.
I just want to finish the Arthur Miller thing because this is there were certain people in this period that when you hear them, you look at them and speaking, and James Baldwin or Marlon Brando or Arthur Miller, and I just love them because every word they say is just, it glistens. And so, Miller says that, suffering's a good thing. And all this baloney about trying to make people happy and all of the consumerism stuff, is completely at odds with the reality that is our human nature. And so what these politicians and these corporations are trying to do, it goes back to the same thing about, robbing you of your soul. That's really where it's at, man, because they're not coming for anything else. They're coming for your soul. That's what they're sucking out of you.
Let's put it in terms of movies, okay?
Uh-huh.
So there's a transition between film noir, which is a mid-war, post-war,
Yeah.
and it's just like
last one was made in 59, I
And
think.
if you look at it, it's like
Touch of Evil,
right.
last one.
It's like, what kind of people are these depicting? From a modern perspective, they're depicting like some PTSD fucked up.
Oh yeah.
Fuckers.
Oh yeah,
who are
yeah, yeah.
cold. Then you have a transition to like Dr. Dolittle, and you have Leave It to Beaver, and you have these like
Lassie.
You have these inhumanly pristine, sort of idealized versions of human nature, and it's like and when you look back, we're like, oh, they were kind of naive. Like,
Well, see, I love that you said that because that's the whole thing with Freud's daughter Anna, who was completely asexual. Weird. Don't be asexual. Please don't be anything. Don't be asexual. Listen,
Well, some people.
I'll tell you.
All right,
please,
hold on.
Don't
Like,
do it. Just have some sex, please.
There is an A in LGBTQA, and it's not always thrown on there. If you are, that's cool. But
I'm not saying there's anything wrong
I think she
with
was
it.
a repressed, full of herself, cold lady who was from a cold family that was pushing that model onto the rest of humanity.
And she messed up a whole family, and two of them commit suicide, right?
One drank himself to death and one committed suicide. I believe.
Yeah.
Or no, I think they both committed suicide. Yeah,
I think so. And
and
and this was her great test case.
Right.
So if listeners, if you have any illusions that there's anything to psychoanalysis helping people, that's not how it. That's not that.
This is a long tangent that says more about me than anything else. But there is a similar thing that happened in this sex cult called the Children of God, where they had a kid that they grew up to be the Messiah, and they documented all of the abuse that they put against him as like teaching him the right way to do things. And he grew up and wound up tying up one of the founders with duct tape and like stabbing her a couple hundred times and making this long YouTube video where he talked about how he was going to murder all of them to get revenge, to reveal it. And I kind of feel like there is a storyline in here that's similar, is that there is this test couple that is this family that is the underpinning of psychoanalysis.
Well, the dad's gone, right? And also it's like, what's up with Anna and the woman, because they're always together.
I kind of like, it seemed like they were gonna have like a lesbian relationship.
Oh, and we didn't get into the nunnery thing because we've left out so much. But please listen, Gigantic Beer. If you ever see the Mike busted out like $13 for a bomber of this baby, and I tell you, I'm already toasted. This is a delicious beer, and it was great beer to talk about this movie because you need some lubrication to get through this stuff. But you're gonna really learn a lot, and you're gonna be able to carry on some seriously intellectual conversations if you watch Century of the Self and all of Adam Curtis's movies, and also. Mr. Curtis, if you do by chance run across our podcast and you hear this and you're ever in New York, we'll buy you lunch, dinner, whatever you want. Please come be on the podcast because we really need Adam Curtis to come on the podcast.
That'd be my absolute dream.
Me too. Thank you all for listening. Bon chance.